My name is Anastasia Thorne, and I am 30 years old. 3 days before my wedding, the phone rang, and the sound of it cutting through the humid, earth-scented air of my glass house felt like a blade drawn across a taut wire. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October. I was deep inside the conservatory I had designed and built with my own hands on the rugged coastline of Blackwood, Maine. The air inside was thick with the scent of damp loam, blooming night jasmine, and the sharp green tang of crushed ferns. My hands were buried in the soil of a raised cedar bed, carefully repotting a rare ghost orchid, my skin stained with peat and charcoal, a playlist of low-humming cello sonatas vibrating through the iron-framed walls. The caller ID flashed across the cracked screen of my phone, resting on the potting bench. Arthur, my father. I picked it up with the side of my shoulder, not wanting to break the sterile seal of the orchid's new environment. 6 words. That is all it took to dismantle 30 years of hoping for a different kind of love. I will not walk you down the aisle. I stopped breathing. The trowel slipped from my soil-caked fingers, clattering against the wooden slats of the bench. I stared at the dark, rich earth, the silence stretching out, 5 seconds of absolute ringing void that felt like a lifetime. Serafina says it would upset her, he added, his voice carrying that same sterile, detached cadence he used when denying a claim at his insurance firm. My older sister, Serafina, 33 years old, married to a hedge fund manager, mother of 2, and the undisputed gravitational center of my parents' universe. Even mine. Always mine. Your sister is going through a very difficult time, Anastasia. Her marriage, you know how fragile things can be. I knew that Serafina's marriage to Julian was a gilded cage built on lies and separate bank accounts. But this was my wedding, not hers. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Victoria, my mother, calling to finish the demolition. Just go solo, Anastasia. Stop making a drama out of nothing. Lots of modern brides walk alone. It is actually quite empowering if you look at it the right way. She said the word empowering, with the same hollow, practiced tone she used when discussing charitable galas she had no intention of attending. 48 hours later, 200 people would turn around as the heavy oak doors of the venue swung open, and the man holding my arm would not be my father. He would be someone better, someone who actually knew how to show up. Welcome to the story of how a family broke me and how the strangers I chose put me back together. I grew up in Blackwood, a town where the salt air eats iron, and the locals keep their secrets buried under layers of generational wealth and winter coats. It is a place of towering pines, gray stone mansions, and people who know your family's net worth but not your middle name. Serafina was the golden child, the ice queen with straight A's, the debate team captain, the girl who played Chopin, while my parents sat in the front row, recording her every move for an audience that didn't exist. My father introduced her at country club dinners the same way every time, raising his crystal glass. This is Serafina. She is going to run the world. He said it like it was a prophecy he had personally authored. I was the one who came home with dirt under my fingernails and sap on my jeans. I was the one who built a makeshift botanical greenhouse in the backyard when I was 12. I used scavenged copper piping from a dumped boat, reclaimed window panes from a demolished Victorian estate, and heavy canvas tarps. It stood 8 feet tall, a jagged, beautiful monstrosity of glass and wood. It was not pretty, but by August it was growing heirloom tomatoes, the size of grapefruits and orchids that bloomed in the dead of winter. That year, the county science fair fell on the exact same Saturday as Serafina's regional debate championship. I entered my greenhouse project, a controlled microclimate ecosystem, complete with soil pH logs, humidity charts, and daily photographic evidence of germination. I won first place. The blue ribbon was pinned to my corkboard by the time my father's luxury sedan finally pulled into the driveway. He walked in 40 minutes late, shaking the autumn chill from his cashmere coat. The judges had already packed up. "Sorry, kiddo," he muttered, not even looking at me. Serafina's event ran long, and the traffic on the coastal highway was a nightmare. He glanced at the blue ribbon, gave a tight, polite nod, the kind you give a waiter who refills your water, and checked his Rolex. "Good job," he said, already turning toward the kitchen. "That greenhouse stayed in the backyard for 8 years. I repaired the copper joints twice, replaced the tarps when the nor'easters tore them, and kept the soil rich. My mother called it an eyesore that lowered the property value. My father called it nothing. He never mentioned it again, but it kept growing, blooming, and defying the Maine winter, whether anyone in the Maine house noticed or not. My high school graduation was on a humid Thursday in June. That same week, Serafina received her acceptance letter to an elite Ivy League business program. My parents decided to combine the celebrations into one dinner at the Gilded Olive, the most pretentious restaurant in Oak Haven. 3 toasts were given that night. All 3 were about Serafina. My father raised his glass of vintage Bordeaux. "To our future CEO." My mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin, whispering about how she always knew Serafina was destined for greatness. Serafina smiled, a perfect practiced curving of her lips, and thanked them for their unwavering belief. I ate my seared scallops and clapped in the right places. No one mentioned my diploma. I had graduated with a 4.0 GPA and a full portfolio acceptance to a prestigious botanical architecture program in Boston. I had paid for my own application fees, my own drafting supplies, working summers hauling mulch and pruning hedges for the wealthy estates of Blackwood. When I told my mother about my chosen major, she set her water glass down and looked at me as if I had spoken in tongues. "That is not a real career, Anastasia. You are playing in the dirt." 5 words. She said them once to my face, and apparently many more times behind my back. Agatha, our neighbor and my grandmother Beatrice's closest friend, told me years later that she had overheard my mother on the phone with her country club sisters. "Anastasia is studying gardening. I don't even know what to tell people when they ask." Serafina's tuition was paid in full by my parents, a staggering sum that my mother mentioned at Thanksgiving, like a public service announcement of their generosity. My tuition? I paid myself. Student loans, late nights drafting landscape plans, bleeding knuckles from pruning thorns. Nobody announced my balance at the dinner table. Serafina married Julian 3 years after graduation. He was a man made of sharp angles and cold cash, wearing charcoal suits that cost more than my first work truck. My parents glowed at the wedding like they had personally orchestrated the merger of the century. Then came the heirs. Clara, now 5, and Leo, now 3. My father retired from his firm the year Leo was born, and those 2 children became the absolute center of his universe. He drove to Serafina's massive, sterile estate in Oak Haven 3 times a week. He built Clara a custom treehouse. He read Leo the same book about a steamship 40 times because Leo would scream if he stopped. Serafina noticed. She noticed the way a master chess player notices a weak pawn. She noticed the leverage she had. The first time she used the children as a weapon was over Christmas seating arrangements. She wanted the head of the table. My father gave it to her, displacing my grandmother. The second time was over a family portrait. Serafina wanted it retaken without me in the background, claiming my casual sweater ruined the aesthetic. My father asked me to step out of the frame. The third time, I heard it myself. I was in the kitchen of my parents' house, fetching a glass of water. The study door was cracked. Speakerphone was on. My father did not realize I was standing just on the other side of the mahogany door. "If you walk her down the aisle, Arthur, I will not bring the children to Christmas. I simply cannot handle the stress of being in the same room as her right now. You know what I am going through with Julian." My father paused. I could hear the heavy, rhythmic ticking of his grandfather clock and the shallow, cowardly sound of his breathing. Then Seraphina's voice, calm, practiced, and utterly venomous. "I mean it, Dad. It is too much for me. My mental health is on the line." My father sighed, a sound of total surrender. "Okay, Sarah, okay. I understand." My mother walked into the kitchen 30 seconds later, saw my face, and knew exactly what I had heard. Her response was not an apology. It was a justification. "She is their mother, Arthur. We cannot push her. You know how fragile she is." That was the hierarchy of my family. Seraphina, then the grandchildren, then my parents' comfort, and then, somewhere far below the property taxes and the country club dues, me. I met Silas on a Tuesday in April, 3 years ago. I was installing a massive, salt-resistant rain garden for a coastal erosion project along Highway 1. He was the maritime architect overseeing the restoration of a historic wooden pier 60 yards down the beach. We both showed up at 6 in the morning, the fog rolling off the Atlantic, the air smelling of brine and wet pine. We both drank black coffee from dented steel thermoses. He saw me hauling a massive, tangled root system of beach plum out of my truck bed, struggling against the shifting sand, and he walked over without being asked. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice a low rumble over the sound of the crashing waves. "I have got it," I grunted, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of a dirty glove. "I know you do," he smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "But my coffee is gone and the tide is out. I am bored." That was the first sentence Silas ever said to me that was not about load-bearing timber or tidal grades. Our first date was a tour of a rare plant nursery in Portland, followed by eating lobster rolls out of a paper bag on the tailgate of my truck. He had sawdust in the cuffs of his jeans. I had soil under my nails. It was the most natural, grounding evening of my entire life. He introduced me to his father 2 weeks later. Elias Thorne, no relation to my family, just a beautiful coincidence of the universe, was 65, a master luthier who built custom violins and cellos. He lived alone in a sprawling cedar-shingled house in Pine Ridge, a quiet town deep in the woods, far away from the coastal elitism of Blackwood. Elias had hands like worn leather, stained with varnish and rosin, and a workshop that smelled of spruce, maple, and centuries of music. There was a radio tuned to a classical station that I am not sure he ever turned off. Elias called me kid by week 3. By month 2, he had built me a custom, climate-controlled display cabinet for my rarest orchids. He carved my initials, AT, into the inside of the left panel. Small, elegant, hidden unless you knew exactly where to look. I run my fingers over those letters every morning. "You have dirt under your nails," he said the first time he visited my greenhouse. "Good. Means you built something real today." Nobody in my biological family had ever said that to me. Silas proposed in the botanical garden I had designed for the Blackwood Public Library. It was an October evening, the maples turning a deep, violent crimson that made people pull their cars over just to stare. He got down on one knee next to the stone bench I had set into the winding path 2 summers earlier. I said yes before the wind could even carry the question away. That night, I called my parents. My father picked up on the fourth ring. I told him the news. There was a silence of about 3 seconds. Then, "Congratulations." Not, "I am so happy for you." Not, "Tell me everything." Just the flat, polite word you use when a colleague announces a minor promotion. My mother took the phone. "Is he from a good family?" She did not ask if I was happy. She did not ask about the rain or the garden or the man who looked at me like I was the only source of light in the room. She asked about his family the way she might ask about a credit score. "He is," I said. "His father is a carpenter, a violin maker." Silence again. The kind of silence where someone is actively choosing not to say the cruel thing they are thinking. I sent the wedding invitation by hand. I designed it myself, pressed ferns and coastal grasses embedded in the thick cotton paper. I drove to their house and left it in the mailbox because I did not want to watch their faces when they opened it. I also asked my father to walk me down the aisle. He said yes, quickly, almost reflexively, like someone agreeing to hold an elevator door. Silas knew. He always knew when I gave my parents a chance they had not earned. He put his hand on my knee, his thumb tracing the calluses there. "You know who they are, Anna." "I know," I whispered, "but I want to give them one last chance to be a family." He nodded. He never told me what to do with my family. He just made sure I had a soft place to land when they inevitably failed me. The call came on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before the wedding. I was in the workshop, trimming the last of the eucalyptus and wild roses for the centerpieces. 14 arrangements, each one hand-tied with linen twine. The radio was playing a low, haunting folk song, and I was humming along when the phone lit up. "Arthur." I wiped my hands on my canvas apron and answered. "Anastasia, I need to tell you something." His voice was the one he used when delivering bad news to a client. Steady, detached, professional avoidance. "I am not going to walk you down the aisle." The pruning shears were still in my other hand. I set them down slowly, the way you set down a fragile glass ornament. "Serafina says it would upset her." "Dad, Serafina is not getting married. I am. She says seeing me give you away would be too painful right now. Her marriage is going through a rough patch. You know that." "So, my wedding day is about her feelings?" Silence. Long, heavy, suffocating. I could hear the television in his den. Some mindless game show. "I am sorry, Anna." I did not yell. I did not cry. I asked him one question, the only one that mattered. "Did Serafina threaten you with the kids again?" More silence. Then his voice dropped lower, a conspiratorial whisper, as if my sister might hear him through the phone. "She said if I walked you, she would not bring Clara and Leo to Christmas." There it was, the lever. The same lever she had been pulling for years, and he had been folding to every single time. His grandchildren traded for his daughter's wedding day, and he chose the trade without blinking. "Okay, Dad." "Anastasia, please understand," I said. "Okay." I hung up, set the phone on the workbench, picked up the shears, and finished the 14th arrangement. My hands did not shake. I wanted them to. Shaking would have meant I was surprised. I was not surprised. I was just finally done pretending I might be. My mother called 10 minutes later, right on schedule. "Victoria Thorne does not leave loose ends." "Your father told you?" "Yes." "Anastasia, do not make this bigger than it is. Go solo. It is actually quite empowering." She said empowering the way someone says organic when they are buying poison. Mom, I asked Dad a year ago. He said yes. Things change. Your sister is hurting. And I am not? Pause. I heard her take a breath, the measured, calculated kind. You have Silas. Serafina has no one right now. I almost laughed. The math of it was so perfectly Victoria. Serafina's pain outweighed mine because Serafina's pain always outweighed mine. Not because it was larger, because it was hers. Stop making drama, Anastasia. This is not the hill to die on. I hung up, walked out to the porch, sat on the top step. The October air was cold enough to see my breath, biting at my cheeks, but not cold enough to go inside. I held my phone in both hands and stared at the garden I had planted when I moved into my coastal cottage 4 years ago. Salt-tolerant roses, wild lavender, a twisted juniper I had shaped by hand. Silas found me 20 minutes later. No tears, just sitting, holding the phone like it was a live grenade. He sat down next to me on the freezing wood. Did not ask what happened. Did not say, I told you so. Just put his heavy, warm arm around my shoulder and waited for the tide to come in. After a while, I stood up, walked through the workshop, stopped at the orchid cabinet Elias built me, ran my fingers along the inside panel, found the carved letters A.T. and traced them twice. Then I went to bed. Wednesday morning, 2 days before the wedding, Silas made eggs, scrambled the way I like them. With chives from the windowsill he keeps alive for me, despite my tendency to overwater everything I love. He set the plate down, sat across from me, and waited. My dad is not walking me. I heard you on the phone. He poured coffee. What do you want to do? Not, I will fix this. Not, let me call them and give them a piece of my mind. Just, what do you want to do? That is Silas. He does not rescue. He stands next to you and hands you the tool you need to build your own bridge. I do not want to walk alone. Then you will not. He took a sip, set the mug down, looking at me the way he looks at a maritime blueprint. Calm, focused, already 3 steps ahead. Dad has been practicing his tie knots since the engagement. I watched him YouTube it twice last Sunday. I smiled. First one in 12 hours. I cannot ask Elias to do that. It is too much. He is retired. He has his own life. Anna, that man built you a climate-controlled cabinet he did not have to build. He drives an hour to your shop on Saturdays to fix hinges you did not ask him to fix. He set a place for you at Sunday dinner 2 months after we started dating and has not removed it since. I stared at my eggs. He has been waiting, Silas said quietly. He just did not want to overstep. The thought of it made something crack open in my chest. Not pain, something warmer. The realization that the person I needed had been there for 3 years, sanding wood in his garage, calling me kid, showing up for every single milestone my own father had skipped. Okay, I said, I will ask him today. Margot called an hour later. My best friend, maid of honor, the kind of woman who tells you your hair looks terrible before a date and then fixes it in 90 seconds with a handful of pins and sheer willpower. She had run into Serafina at the high-end salon in Oakhaven that morning. Your sister was there, Margot said, her voice tight, and she was not subtle. What did she say? She was telling the stylist about your wedding, how stressful it is, how it is making everything about Anastasia again. I closed my eyes. Again? Her word. She said, and I am quoting, Anastasia always gets the attention now. Ever since she started that little dirt business, it is like the rest of us do not exist. I almost dropped the phone. Anastasia always gets the attention. Me. The one who won a science fair to an empty chair. the one whose graduation dinner became a Serafina acceptance party, the one whose career was publicly labeled not real by her own mother. She also said, Margot continued, her voice dropping to a furious whisper, that her little garden business is not even real work, that you are just playing in the mud because you could not cut it in the real world. There it was, the same sentence, Victoria's words in Serafina's mouth, passed down like a cursed heirloom. She is not upset about the wedding, Anna, Margot said softly. She is jealous. You have Silas. You have your business. You have a life that does not need her to validate it, and she cannot stand it. I sat with that for a minute. Margot was right. Serafina did not want my dad to walk me because it would hurt her. She wanted him to stay home because my happiness was something she could not control, and controlling the aisle walk was the closest she could get to stealing my thunder. I should tell you about Thanksgiving. Last November, Serafina hosted because Victoria insisted. Your sister has the bigger dining room. This was technically true. It was also beside the point. Julian sat at the head of the table in a shirt that probably cost what I charge for a full coastal landscape installation. He checked his phone 11 times during the meal. I counted because I was seated directly across from him, and there was nothing else to look at while Victoria talked about Serafina's kitchen renovation. Serafina was loud that night, not her normal, curated loud. The loud where you are trying to fill a room so nobody hears the silence underneath. She laughed at things that were not funny. She refilled glasses that were still half full. She touched Julian's arm twice, and he did not react either time. Then Clara said it. She was 5. She had mashed potatoes on her chin, and she said it the way 5-year-olds say everything, clearly, and without knowing the devastating weight of the words. Why does Daddy sleep in the office? The table went dead silent. Julian looked up from his phone. Serafina's face did something I had never seen before. It folded. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something underneath both of those. Pure, unadulterated terror. My father cleared his throat and asked Leo if he wanted more bread, but I saw Serafina's hands. They shook when she poured the wine. A small, violent tremor. 2 seconds. Then she straightened up, smiled a brittle, broken smile, and passed the cranberry sauce like nothing had happened. I understood something that night. Serafina's marriage was not going through a rough patch. It was going through the floor, and instead of dealing with it, she was rearranging the furniture on top of the cracks. My wedding was just the latest piece of furniture she needed to move. Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before the wedding, I drove to Elias's house in Pine Ridge. The house is surrounded by towering pines, the air smelling of wood smoke and damp earth. The garage smells of linseed oil, cedar, and racine. The radio in his workshop plays classical music at a volume that suggests he believes Bach should be experienced as a background presence in all of human activities. He was sanding a cello neck when I pulled in. He was in his work apron, the one with varnish permanently embedded in the fabric like a second skin. I stood at the garage door for a full 10 seconds before he looked up. Hey, kid. He blew dust off the wood. Coffee is on inside. Elias. He must have heard something in my voice because he set the sandpaper down immediately, turned to face me, wiped his hands on a rag. My dad backed out of walking me down the aisle. He did not say, I am sorry. He did not ask why. He did not shake his head or offer an opinion about my father or my family. He just looked at me with those steady, pale blue eyes, the same eyes Silas has, and said 5 words. When do you need me? That is the sentence. That is the whole thing. No hesitation. No, are you sure? No, let me think about it. The man was sanding a cello, and the next breath he took was offering to walk me into my future, like it was already carved into his calendar. "Saturday at 1, I whispered, my voice cracking. "I will be there at noon," he said. He picked up the sandpaper, started sanding again. Then quieter. "Kid, I have been waiting for someone to ask." I cried in the truck on the way home, the first time all week. The next 48 hours moved like a tidal current. Margot handled logistics with the calm efficiency of a general. She updated the seating chart. The father of the bride seat at the head table was reassigned. Front row, center aisle, now labeled with a small, elegant card. Elias Thorne, the seat my dad was supposed to fill. Silas took his dad suit shopping Thursday after work. Elias had a tweed jacket from a decade ago that he swore still fit. Silas sent me a photo from the fitting room. Elias, in a new charcoal suit, looking simultaneously proud and uncomfortable, his rough, varnished hands sticking out of the pressed cuffs like they did not belong to the same outfit. Silas texted underneath the photo. He asked me 3 times if the tie was straight. I wrote my vows that evening in the workshop. The orchid cabinet was to my left. A cutting board Elias had started for our wedding gift to my right. I wrote by hand on the back of a landscape sketch, crossed out lines, rewrote them, settled on something simple. My parents did not call Wednesday, did not call Thursday, did not text. I checked my phone twice Thursday night and then put it in the kitchen drawer. Silas noticed. He did not say anything. He just made tea and left a mug on my nightstand. I did not tell my parents about Elias. They assumed I would walk alone. Let them assume. The doors would open Saturday and the answer would be standing right next to me. Thursday afternoon, I was reorganizing the centerpieces when there was a knock at the front door. Agatha, 68 years old, silver hair always pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She lived 3 houses down from my parents and had been my grandmother Beatrice's closest friend for 40 years. When Beatrice died 11 years ago, Agatha was the one who sat with her at the end. She was also the one who told me about Victoria, calling my career gardening behind my back. Agatha stood on my porch holding a yellowed sealed envelope. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The week before she passed. She told me to hold it until you were getting married." Agatha's eyes were damp. "I have been carrying it for 11 years, Anastasia. I was beginning to think it would outlast me." The envelope was soft at the edges. My grandmother's handwriting on the front. Just my name. I opened it at the kitchen table. Agatha sat across from me and did not speak. The letter was short. Beatrice had always been efficient with words. "Anastasia, when you read this, you are about to walk into the most important room of your life. I wish I could be there. I wish I could tell your mother to sit down and let you shine. I wish I could tell your father to look up from whatever is distracting him and actually see you. But I know how that family works, so let me say what they will not. You have always been the one who builds. From that greenhouse to whatever you are building now, you make things grow where nothing was. Do not wait for them to see it. The people who show up are your real family. I love you. Build something beautiful." I read it 3 times, folded it carefully, placed it in the clutch bag I would carry on Saturday. Family is who shows up. Thursday night passed without a call. Friday the same. No text, no voicemail, no last-minute change of heart from Arthur or Victoria. Friday evening was the rehearsal dinner. Elias drove an hour from Pine Ridge. He arrived 20 minutes early and helped the caterer move tables because he saw them struggling and could not watch someone carry a folding table incorrectly. 30 guests, all from Silas's side. My college roommate, two women from the botanical workshop I run on Saturday mornings, Agatha, Margot, of course, and nobody from my family. The venue looked breathtaking. The Ironwood Vineyard, an abandoned, reclaimed estate on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Open sides, string lights, wildflower arrangements I had designed and grown myself. Coastal grasses, sea lavender, and late-season dahlias in copper vases I found at an estate sale. Elias stood up for the toast. He held his glass the way he holds a chisel, firmly, like he means it. I am not a man of many words. Ask Silas. He will confirm. Light laughter. But I will say this. 3 years ago, a woman showed up at my son's job site and hauled a root system out of the sand like it owed her money. I liked her immediately. He paused, looked at me. I never got a daughter. God just made me wait a little longer. The room went quiet. Margot pressed a napkin to her eyes. Silas put his hand on my knee under the table. Elias raised his glass. To Anastasia, who makes things grow. I looked at his wrist. Sawdust. Just a trace. Caught in the fold of his cuff. He had come straight from the workshop. That was Friday. Saturday was the wedding. That same Friday evening, an hour south, my father sat in his garage. I did not know this at the time. Margot told me weeks later. She had a friend in Blackwood who saw Arthur at the gas station, and they exchanged a few words. The friend said he looked like a man carrying something too heavy to put down and too painful to hold. He sat in the garage where he used to park his sedan, on a folding chair looking at the wall. There was a photo on the pegboard. Me at 12, holding a massive heirloom tomato from the greenhouse, grinning like I had invented sunlight. He had hung that photo years ago and apparently never taken it down, even though the greenhouse was gone. Victoria made him dismantle it when I left for college. It is an eyesore, Arthur. Victoria came out to the garage at 9. Are we going tomorrow? Arthur looked at her. I think we should. Fine, but we sit in the back. I'm not going to let Anastasia turn this into some kind of statement. Arthur nodded. He opened his phone, typed a message to me. I am proud of you, Anna. He stared at the screen for a long time, read it back, then deleted every word, locked the phone, and went inside. I did not know about the message until much later, but I think about it sometimes, not with sadness, more with a kind of tired understanding. My father is not a cruel man. He is a weak one, and weakness, when it sits in the same house as control, becomes cruelty by default. Friday evening, 9:45. My phone buzzed. Serafina. I heard you are not walking alone. Who is walking you? I looked at the screen, put the phone face down, did not reply. 11 minutes later, Margot forwarded me a screenshot. Serafina had texted her, Do you know who is walking Anastasia tomorrow? She will not answer me. Margot's response was a single period. Nothing else. I loved her for that. Serafina called my dad next. I know because Arthur texted Silas, not me. Silas, at 10:15. Serafina is upset. She thinks Anastasia is bringing someone to walk her to embarrass us. Maybe we should not go. Silas typed a response and then deleted it. Typed another one, deleted that too. Then he set the phone down and looked at me. Your dad just asked if we are trying to embarrass them. At my own wedding. I took a breath, held it, let it go. Victoria called Arthur back. I found this out later from Agatha, who had a network of informants I will never fully understand. Victoria told Arthur they were going. I will not give her the satisfaction of saying we were not there. Classic Victoria. Attendance as a strategic position, not an act of love. Then Serafina's final text of the night to my dad, forwarded later by Agatha. If you are going, then I am coming too. So that was the setup. Saturday morning, a wedding, 200 guests, a violin maker in a charcoal suit, and 3 uninvited spectators in the back row who still thought the day was about them. I woke at 5:15. The cottage was dark. Silas had slept at Elias's. Tradition, he said, though I suspect it was mostly so. Elias would not pace the kitchen alone all night. I made coffee, sat on the porch. The garden was still in that early morning fog where everything looks like a watercolor left out in the rain. The coastal roses were fading. Late October does that. But the sea lavender still held. It always holds longer than you expect. My phone had 2 messages. Elias. Ready when you are, kid. Tie is straight. I checked 4 times. Silas. See you at the end of the aisle. I will be the one who cannot stop smiling. I looked at my hands. Calluses on the pads below my index fingers from years of pruning shears. A thin scar on my left thumb from a glasshouse repair gone wrong when I was 17. Soil under the nail of my right ring finger that I must have missed in the shower. These hands built a greenhouse at 12. They planted lavender and coastal roses. They dug beds for wealthy estates, signed business licenses, shook hands with clients, arranged 14 centerpieces for a wedding that my own parents could not be bothered to attend with grace. I finished my coffee, washed the mug, showered, dried my hair, pinned it up with the pearl hairpin Agatha had given me, along with Beatrice's letter. It had been my grandmother's. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw exactly what I expected. Not a victim, not a broken daughter, just a woman with dirt-stained hands and a clear plan for the day. I picked up the clutch bag with Beatrice's letter inside, drove to the venue. The Ironwood Vineyard was a masterpiece of reclaimed wood and glass, perched on the edge of the world. I had done the flowers myself. Every arrangement, wildflower bundles in copper vases, sea lavender, sprigs of rosemary, because my grandmother always said rosemary was for remembrance. The altar was framed with climbing clematis I had trained on a wooden trellis Silas built. It smelled like earth, salt, and October. Margot was already in the bridal suite when I arrived. She had my makeup kit open and a mimosa in hand. You look like a woman who has been awake since 5. 5:15, close enough. She worked quickly. Foundation, blush, a lip color she called Quiet Power. Agatha arrived at 10 with a small velvet box. Inside, a pair of pearl drop earrings. Your grandmother's, Agatha said. She wore these to her own wedding in 1960. Something borrowed, something old, both in one. I held them in my palm. They were warm. My college friends arrived next. The 5 of us in the bridal suite, Margot fixing my hair, Agatha sitting in the corner with her hands in her lap, like a woman who had been waiting 11 years for exactly this morning. No mother, no sister. Margot caught me glancing at the door once. Stop looking at that door, Anna. Everyone who matters is already in this room. She was not wrong, but it still stung. A knock at the door. 10:45. Margot opened it. Elias stood in the doorway in his new charcoal suit, white shirt, navy tie Silas had picked out. His hands hung at his sides, still rough, still scarred from decades of wood and strings and things built for other people. He saw me in my dress and stopped. For a man who spends his life measuring cuts to the 16th of an inch, Elias is remarkably imprecise with his emotions. His eyes filled immediately. His jaw tightened. He blinked twice, hard, and then said, "Oh, kid, do not cry, Elias. I just got my mascara on. I am not crying. Sawdust gets everywhere." Margot laughed from across the room. Agatha smiled. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Maple, hand-finished. Inside was a boutonniere, dried coastal leaves, sea oats wrapped in twine. Made it this morning. Figured flowers from a store would not feel right for you. I pinned it to his lapel. The leaves were from his workshop, same maple as the orchid cabinet, same that had been part of my life for 3 years, built into the walls of my daily routine. You look beautiful, he said. Then he corrected himself. No, you look strong. Nobody had ever said that to me on a day when I was supposed to look beautiful, and it was exactly the right word. He took a seat in the corner next to Agatha. The two of them sat there quietly, a 65-year-old violin maker and a 68-year-old retired teacher, like the most unlikely security detail in wedding history, waiting for the doors to open. At noon, I peeked through the curtain at the side of the vineyard. Silas's side was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, friends from his maritime firm. My side was smaller, but not empty. Agatha's seat was reserved up front. My college friends were there. 7 women from my botanical workshop. 3 landscaping clients who had become friends. My accountant, who once told me my quarterly taxes made her proud. And then I saw the back row. Far right. 3 figures. Arthur in a dark suit looking at his shoes. Victoria sitting rigid with her purse on her lap like a shield. And Serafina in a dress that was slightly too formal for an outdoor cliffside wedding, scanning the room with the expression of someone cataloging exits. They came. My stomach dropped. Not because I was afraid. Because for 1 second, one stupid reflexive second, my heart said, maybe they are here to make it right. Then I watched Victoria lean over and whisper something to Arthur, and he nodded without looking up, and I knew they were not here for me. They were here so they could say they were here. Attendance as an alibi. I let the curtain fall, turned back to the room. Margot was adjusting her bouquet. Elias was brushing something off his sleeve. Agatha was reading Beatrice's letter one more time. The coordinator stepped in. 15 minutes! The music started at 1 sharp, a string quartet Silas had found through a friend. They played something soft and ascending. It sounded like sunlight moving through pine trees. The bridesmaids walked first, then Margot last. She paused at the door and looked back at me, winked, and stepped through. Silence. The brief, held breath kind where 200 people go still at once, and the only sound is the wind off the Atlantic. The coordinator touched my arm. Ready? I opened the clutch bag, took out Beatrice's letter, read 1 line, the last one. The people who show up are your real family. I folded it, put it back, closed the clasp. Elias stepped beside me. He offered his arm. His sleeve was crisp, but his hand was the same. Rough, warm, calloused from 40 years of building things for people he loved. I placed my hand on his forearm and felt the steadiness of a man who does not shake. You good? He asked. I am good. Then let us go show them what showing up looks like. The heavy oak doors swung open. Light flooded in. October sun, low and gold, catching the dust motes in the air like someone had scattered glitter by hand. 200 heads turned, and there we were, Elias Thorne and Anastasia Thorne, a violin maker and a botanical architect. Neither one of us related by blood, both of us exactly where we were supposed to be. I felt his hand cover mine on his arm, steady, warm, the rough grain of decades of work pressed against my skin. He took the first step and I matched it. We walked. I did not look at the back row. I did not need to. I looked straight ahead where Silas stood at the end of the aisle with wet eyes and a grin that said everything his words would say later. This was my wedding day, and I was not walking alone. The aisle was 60 feet long. I know because I measured it myself during the venue walkthrough in August. 60 feet of reclaimed oak planks. The irony of walking on oak toward a future given to me by a man who built with it was not lost on me. At the time, I was counting Elias's steps. Left, right, left. Slow and steady, the same rhythm he uses when he planes a board. Measured, intentional. The gas started about 10 steps in. Not loud, just the small, involuntary sounds people make when they are putting together a story in real time. Guess who knew Margot's friends? The botanical workshop moms? My accountant? They smiled and pressed tissues to their eyes. Guess who did not know looked at Elias and then scanned the room for someone who looked like a father of the bride and found a man in the back row who would not meet anyone's eyes. I did not look at Arthur. I want to be clear about that. I did not turn my head, did not search for his face, did not give him the satisfaction of a glance or the cruelty of a pointed one. I looked at Agatha, who was dabbing her eyes in the front row, at Margot, standing at the altar, hand over her mouth. Then I looked at Silas. He stood at the end of the aisle, hands at his sides, eyes full. He nodded once at Elias. Not a greeting, but a thank you. In the back row, I am told Arthur half stood, caught himself on the pew, sat back down. Victoria grabbed his arm. Serafina stared straight ahead with an expression that Agatha later described as a woman watching a door close that she cannot reopen. We reached the altar. The officiant smiled. Who gives this woman in marriage? Elias cleared his throat. He is not a man who speaks to crowds. He builds for them, fixes things for them, feeds them Sunday roast and sends them home with leftovers. But today, he did. Her family does. A pause. Then quieter, like he was saying it to me rather than the room. All of us who showed up. The room exhaled. I heard a soft sob from the front row. Agatha. Margot's mascara was already running. Elias turned to me, took both my hands, squeezed once. His grip was the same grip that shaped the orchid cabinet, the cutting board, the boutonniere. The same hands. Go get married, kid. He placed my hand in Silas's, stepped back, walked to the front row center aisle, sat in the seat that had been labeled with his name that morning, the seat my father was supposed to fill. Silas leaned in and mouthed 2 words to his dad. Thank you. Elias nodded, folded his hands in his lap. I noticed sawdust on his right cuff. He always had sawdust on his right cuff. I turned to Silas. The ceremony began. When it came time for vows, I said what I had written in the workshop 2 nights earlier, next to the orchid cabinet, on the back of a landscape sketch. I choose you, and I choose the family we build, not the one we were given, the one we make with our hands every day from the ground up. Silas said his vows. I do not remember the words. I remember his eyes. We were married at 1:27 in the afternoon. The reception started at 2. Same vineyard, tables rearranged, string lights on. The band played something acoustic and warm. People danced. Leo, Serafina's 3-year-old, ran between tables chasing a balloon that had escaped its anchor. Clara sat on Arthur's lap and asked for cake. At 3, Elias stood up for his toast. The room quieted the way rooms do when they can feel something real about to happen. I'm going to keep this short because Silas told me if I talked for more than 2 minutes, he would play me off with a trombone. Laughter. I do not own a trombone, so I believe him. He held his glass. The first time Anastasia came to my house for Sunday dinner, I had a rare fern on the windowsill. It was dying. Had been dying for a year. I had given up on it. She walked in, looked at it, and within 10 minutes, she had repotted it, moved it to a different window, and told me I was overwatering. He looked at me. I knew then. Any woman who saves a dying plant without being asked is also the kind of woman who will save a dying old man from eating alone every Sunday. Silence. Then the room broke open. Applause. Tears. Margot stood up and clapped until her palms were red. People started talking after the toast. Not to me directly, but around me, the way you talk at events when you want the person to overhear. She designed the conservatory at the library, you know. Her company does the coastal erosion projects. Have you seen them in spring? She runs a free workshop for moms every Saturday. My work speaking for itself in a room full of people who came because they chose to, while my own family sat at a corner table and said nothing. Arthur found me at the dessert table. I was cutting into the lemon cake. My choice, not Victoria's. When I felt someone step too close on my left side, I knew it was him before I turned. He smelled like the same aftershave he has worn since I was 7. Old Spice. Anastasia, I turned. He was holding a glass of water. Not champagne. Water. His eyes were red at the edges, and his jaw was doing the thing it does when he is trying not to say something that might come out wrong. That man, he did a good job. His name is Elias. Arthur nodded. Elias, yes. He did a good job up there. He did. Silence. Arthur looked at the cake, at the table, at anything that was not my face. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I looked at him, not with anger, not with forgiveness, just the flat, clear gaze of someone who has spent 30 years watching a man choose the path of least resistance. Sorry that you missed it, I said. Or sorry that everyone saw? He flinched. Small. The kind of flinch that only happens when someone says out loud what you have been thinking for 3 days. Before he could answer, Victoria appeared, hand on his elbow, guiding him away the way she always guides him, firmly, like steering a cart. Arthur, come sit down. She leaned toward me as she turned him away, voice low, controlled. Do not make a scene, Anastasia. I picked up the cake knife, set a slice on a plate. I'm not the one making scenes, Mom. I am cutting cake. She walked away. Arthur followed. He always follows. The father-daughter dance was at 4, except it was not a father-daughter dance. It was Elias and me on a wooden deck under string lights to a song Silas picked, an acoustic cover of a folk song that made Margot cry for the 3rd time. Elias danced the way he builds, carefully, with attention to where his feet were going. He held my hand in his and kept his other hand on my shoulder, not my waist, because Elias is the kind of man who respects a boundary even at a wedding. I step on feet, he warned. I know, Silas told me. That boy has no loyalty, I laughed. The room laughed. 200 people watching a violin maker dance with a botanical architect and feeling something true underneath the music. At the corner table, Serafina watched. Julian was not there. He had a work trip, or that is what she told Victoria. The chair next to her was empty and she was gripping a champagne flute like it owed her something. Agatha walked over and sat down beside Serafina. Not hostile, not warm, just present. Beatrice would have been so proud of Anastasia today, Agatha said. Serafina looked at her. She would have been proud of both of you, Serafina, if you had let her. Serafina's eyes filled. She set the glass down, stood, walked to the bathroom. She was in there for 15 minutes. When she came out, her makeup was freshly applied, but her eyes were swollen and her hands were still shaking the way they shook at Thanksgiving. I saw her cross the room from the dance floor. I did not go to her. I did not send someone after her. I kept dancing with Elias. Some doors close because you shut them. Others close because the person on the other side stopped holding them open. I did not see my parents leave. Margot told me later they slipped out around 5, between the cake cutting and the bouquet toss. The way you leave a party you were never really at. The drive home for Arthur and Victoria was an hour. Agatha heard from a neighbor who heard from Victoria's sister that neither of them spoke for the first 20 minutes. Then Arthur said something. That man built her a cabinet. Victoria looked at him. What? In her workshop, maple, with her initials carved inside. Victoria stared at the road. When was the last time we built her anything, Victoria? No answer. The road between the vineyard and their house runs along the reservoir. Flat water, dark trees, the kind of drive that gives you too much time to think. She did not even look at me, Victoria, Arthur said, his voice breaking. When she walked down the aisle, she did not look. She was looking at Silas. She was looking at everyone except me. And she was right to. Victoria said nothing. Arthur pulled into the driveway. Victoria went inside. Arthur sat in the car. The garage light was still on from Friday night. The photo of 12-year-old Anastasia with the tomato was still on the pegboard. The greenhouse was gone. Victoria made him take it down years ago, but the soil marks where it stood were still faintly visible in the lawn, even in the dark. Some things leave outlines even after they are removed. Arthur checked his phone. No message from Anastasia. No message coming. The wedding was over. His daughter was married. A violin maker had done what he was supposed to do, and the seat labeled Elias Thorne at the front of the venue was the loudest statement anyone made all day, without saying a word. He went inside and closed the door. Monday morning, 2 days after the wedding, I opened the workshop at 7, same as always. New order on the desk, landscape design for the children's wing garden at the Blackwood Memorial Hospital, 1,200 square feet, sensory plants for kids in recovery, texture gardens, things you can touch and smell and hold. Silas brought coffee at 8. Black. Chives on the windowsill still alive. Elias came by at 9 with a cutting board he had been working on for weeks. Cherry wood. Inlaid walnut striped down the center. For the newlyweds, he said, as if he had not walked me down the aisle 48 hours ago, as if it was just another Saturday. I set it on the counter next to the orchid cabinet he built 3 years ago. Same man, same hands, same showing up without being asked. My phone buzzed at noon. One text from Arthur. Can we talk? I read it. Set the phone face down on the drafting table. Opened the hospital garden plans. Started sketching the sensory path. Rosemary for memory. Lavender for calm. Mint for energy. Plants that give you something just by being near them. The greenhouse I built at 12 was 8 feet tall and grew tomatoes for one family. This one would be 1,200 square feet and grow healing for children who needed it. I picked up my pencil, drew the first line of the path, then the second, then the border beds, then the entrance arch. Outside, the October light moved through my workshop window and caught the carved letters on the inside of the cabinet. A T, small enough to miss, deep enough to last. I did not answer the text. I had work to do. 2 weeks after the wedding, Serafina called. I was on a job site, the hospital garden, measuring drainage grades, when her name appeared on my screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something in me, some remnant of the girl who repaired the greenhouse hinge twice because she believed things could be fixed, made me answer. Anastasia? I am here. Silence. long enough that I checked to see if the call dropped. Julian left. I set down my measuring tape. He moved out last week, took his things while I was at the grocery store, left a note on the counter. I waited. Serafina's breathing was uneven, not crying, trying not to cry. I just thought you should know. Okay. Another pause, then her voice broke. Not dramatically, not the way she performs for my parents, but quietly, like a crack in a wall that has been spreading for years and finally reached the surface. I thought if I could keep Mom and Dad focused on me, it would fill the gap. Julian was not there. The kids were not enough. I needed to be the center of something, and your wedding was in the way. Your happiness was in the way. I let that sit. I did not comfort her. I did not attack her. I stood on a construction site with dirt on my boots and held the phone and listened to my sister finally say the things she had been hiding behind manipulation for years. Serafina, I hope you find what you need. I mean that, but I'm not your emotional cushion anymore. I cannot be the thing you lean on while you push me down. She cried quietly. I let her. Then I said goodbye and went back to measuring. A letter arrived the following week. Handwritten. My father's handwriting. Small, tilted, the penmanship of a man who learned to write in a school that still used fountain pens. Not a text. Not a call. A letter. Mailed with a stamp. I opened it in the workshop, alone, standing next to the orchid cabinet. Anastasia, I should have walked you down that aisle. I knew it when Serafina asked me not to, and I knew it when your mother told me it would be fine, and I knew it when I sat in the back row and watched another man do what I was supposed to do. I chose wrong. I have been choosing wrong your whole life and telling myself it was easier. It was not easier. It was just cowardly. I let your sister use those children as a wall between us. I let your mother tell me that keeping the peace was the same as being a good father. It was not. Keeping the peace meant keeping you at a distance, and I did it because I was too afraid of what would happen if I pushed back. Elias earned what I threw away. He showed up. I did not. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not think I would forgive me either. But I want you to know that the photo of you holding that tomato is still on my wall. And I wish I had told you then what I should have said 1,000 times since. I am proud of you, Anastasia. I always was. I was just too weak to say it out loud. Dad! I read it twice, folded it, placed it in the desk drawer next to Beatrice's letter. 2 letters. 2 very different weights. I did not reply. I used to think family was the people you were born to, the ones who shared your blood, your name, your dinner table. I do not think that anymore. Family is the man who drives an hour to your workshop on a Saturday to fix a hinge you did not ask him to fix. Family is a letter in a yellowed envelope from a woman who has been gone 11 years. Family is who shows up. That is my story. 3 days of silence, 1 letter from a grandmother, and a violin maker who said yes before I finished asking.